I've canceled a one-on-one to make room for a meeting that mattered less. Not once, but enough times that I had a system for it. That 30 minutes was the only thing on my calendar that never pushed back about being moved, which is exactly why it was the one I should have protected. There's a 3,000-year-old story about this, and it's in theaters right now.
Welcome to the Beyond Just Leadership podcast, where it starts from within, and you learn to lead deeper, lead people, and lead well. Here's your host, Stephen Alfin.
So what are you actually saying when you move it? Nothing on your calendar is easier to move because your report will always say yes. That isn't permission, that's the power difference doing the talking. And you can relate to this. I think about it all the time. When you cancel this one-on-one, they're the quickest to say, oh yeah, everything's fine, that's great, and it gets time back on their calendar. You think you're doing a great thing, but in reality, you're not. Because what they hear, however kindly this note is worded, everything else on this calendar outranks you. You move it twice, they stop bringing you the small stuff a third time, and they stop telling you they're looking. The meeting you keep canceling is the one your team is using to decide whether you mean it. So here, why am I talking about this? There's too many times in my career where this has occurred, and it's a bad thing. Even though you may think, hey, it's not a big deal. You know, you move a one-on-one, we're going to be totally fine. It's not a big deal. Let me give you a couple of different examples. So I think I've shared this experience before, but I don't think in this detail. So when I was at a company, I want to be very protective of the individual, so I'm not going to even say where it was. But I was at a company sitting, and I was having a one-on-one, and I always had consistent one-on-ones every week with this individual. They had just been promoted up to a manager. And so these consistent one-on-ones were important because first off, I was helping build their confidence in how to lead. They were a first-time people manager, and so they were struggling with the concept of, hey, you're no longer doing the work, you have to lead. So I would meet with this individual, and building that confidence with them was key because, and I guess you could say trust, because what ended up transpiring was in one of the one-on-ones when I asked how they were doing, first off, this individual, and this is the part you probably remember, this individual started crying. And a lot of times people ask, well, Stephen, what did you do different here? I didn't do anything different. It's just that I care about people, and it usually comes out in everything I do. And so this individual started opening up about things in their personal life that they wouldn't have if I would have kept moving this one-on-one. Because the trust wouldn't have been there. A lot of things wouldn't have been there. The relationship that we grew, yes, and it was a remote environment. That's what's crazy is you can build relationships in remote environments like this as long as you're consistent. You can't just show up to a one-on-one and wing it, but you also have to prepare. You have to have things that you do and to check in on the individual so that there is some accountability to them too of hey, I know Steven's going to ask how I'm doing because he cares. And so those are the important things is you do have a consistent, systematic way of doing it. Yes, it's built for you, but don't become a robot and just ask the questions. You have to truly mean it. The structure is just there to help you. And so if I would have canceled any of those one-on-ones, this individual wouldn't have opened up to me. So then the second, and I love this because a lot of times leaders, we don't like to receive feedback. And I think I've shared this before too, but I was at a company, again, I was managing leaders of leaders, meaning their direct reports were also leaders, and then below them were individual contributors. And I had consistent one-on-ones with this individual too. And so building this confidence and building the muscle of doing the one-on-ones, this individual came to me and really expressed things that they wish I would do better. And you think as a leader, oh no, like I'm getting hammered by one of my direct reports. But it was one of the best one-on-ones I've ever had, because it made me realize, hey, I can do better in so many areas to serve the people I'm working for, or to serve the people I'm leading. Like, I can do better. And that confidence, that trust of that individual telling me these things wouldn't have been there if I didn't have consistent one-on-ones. And so it's extremely valuable thing that we must do. So I want to go into a movie that's out right now, but I'm going to kind of mention this. So the Odyssey actually is a fantastic movie. I've watched it twice, but there's something in this story that actually isn't in the movie that I think is extremely valuable as it relates to one-on-ones and leadership. And I hope I get this name right too. So Aeolus in the actual Odyssey. So basically Odysseus is trying to get home to his family after being in the Trojan War for 10 years. So what ends up happening is Aeolus, one of the gods, basically gives a bag holding every wind in the world except the one that actually blows Odysseus home. It's an ox hide. It's tied with a silver wire. And so what ends up happening is they're almost home. Like, they can see Ithaca right there. They can see it, and basically they were close enough to see fires on the beach, and Odysseus falls asleep. So when he falls asleep, because he hadn't really explained what was in this bag, the crew thought, hey, there could be some gold in there. There could be something in there. And so what they ended up doing is they opened it up, and then they got blown further away from Ithaca. And I don't want to go into the whole story, but the big thing is he never told them what was in the bag. The gap, I guess you could say, didn't stay empty. They filled it with their own story, which was worse than the truth. And so he had 9 days, like, thinking about, like, as they were traveling to Ithaca with this wind, to have this conversation, but he spent 9 of them holding the rope that kept this bag shut. And so it's interesting because, like, in the actual book or the poem, Homer actually says this, or Odysseus is trying to explain himself, but he says, sleep and my foolish crew brought the harm. So what does he do? He also blames the crew for this and his sleep. He didn't actually blame that he could have actually had a one-on-one or explained to his whole crew, hey guys, guess what? This is what's in the bag, which is fascinating from a leadership standpoint. So he never once says, I never told them what was in the bag. He doesn't say that. And that's the part I recognize, not the shipwreck, the explanation. And then I'll kind of relate this to kind of tie this all together, is you kind of have to think of too, now kind of going to the movie. Yes, a little bit of it is different than the actual poem itself, but it's fascinating to see Odysseus have this struggle as a leader. And then he finally gets it at the end. But the entire voyage, he's thinking of himself, of, like, I want to get home. Yes, his crew wanted to get home, and they were doing everything possible. But who shows up at the end? back home is it's just him and none of his crew. Now, us as leaders, I think about this all the time. Am I being that way? Am I being selfish? Am I thinking about myself too much? Because do I only care about what I'm doing, where I'm going in my career? Do I only care about me? Because leadership isn't that. You can't think of yourself the whole entire time. What I love about the portrayal in the movie is by the end of it, Odysseus has that reflection of, oh no, like there were so many of my crew or the warriors that went to Troy with me or whoever it may be, he cares for them. And yeah, he wishes he could do things differently, but that's hindsight's always 20/20. We can act now. We can be better today if we choose to. And I think he wishes that, and I love that portrayal of it. And just this little story too that wasn't even in the movie is it's just amazing because it's like, hey, we can learn from these. There's always things around us that we can learn from, and we can always be better. And the other thing too is oftentimes, and this has been on my mind a lot, is as leaders we want to control every situation. But guess what? We're not going to control every situation. We can't. At the end of the movie, it's fascinating because Calypso, whenever Odysseus is trying to get back home, she kind of makes a comment of, you just have to let go. That Odysseus was trying to control every situation, trying to protect his crew by the end of it at all costs. But in essence, just giving it up and letting Poseidon and the sea kind of take him back. And what's fascinating with that story is I think of all of us as leaders, we can't control every situation. One of the things that I think about is control your controllables. I've been taught that my whole career by a lot of my mentors, and it's 100% true, is you can't control maybe something specific in a goal. But the important thing is you control what you can control. You can control showing up to a one-on-one. You can't control that. You can stop pushing it. You can stop canceling it. You can control having a meaningful conversation and putting everything aside. I think that's the important thing. You know, I wasn't going to talk about this, but my wife and I just celebrated our 15th anniversary. I was actually going to record this podcast on that day. And when I started sitting down and doing it, I had this pull to not do it. This pull was similar to canceling one-on-ones. Your kids need things, and your kids want you present. Your wife wants you present. Your spouse or your significant other, whoever it may be. And a lot of times we are working or we're doing certain things and we keep pushing them away and saying, hey, you know what, I'm working and we can do it later. Or if they come and ask you something, it's like, hey, Dad, can you help me with this? And you know, I can't right now, I'm working, I'll do it later. It's the same thing in a one-on-one. If you keep pushing them off, if you keep pushing your kids off, what ends up happening is they don't want to come to you and ask you for things. So then they go to my wife. And then if she's not available, they'll go to somebody else. And it hurts when you kind of step back and take a look at it. And what's more important? Is work more important? Is recording this podcast more important? The answer to that is no. What's more important is family, are the people in front of us, are my kids, my relationship with God. All of these things are more important to me than anything else. And so you think of a one-on-one, think about that. Is if you had a one-on-one with a CEO or a VP of a company and they canceled it on you, how would you feel as a leader? You would do everything you can to meet with the CEO and VP and have that FaceTime with them. And to think of your preparation for that one-on-one. So then you think of your direct report, put yourself in their shoes. Same thing. If you're canceling on them on the surface, they're saying, hey, that's totally fine. Not a big deal. But in essence, they feel, oh, they don't care about me. It's the same thing of my kids saying to me, oh, my dad, he's working. he's doing what, so I can't go ask him. He's just going to say no. And so these are the things that you have to think about whenever we start canceling on our direct reports. So here's what you can do now, and it's not complicated. Protect the one-on-one like it's with your boss's boss, like I just explained, if it's with the CEO or VP. If you never move that one, you've already decided the one-on-one is the flexible one. That's a decision you made, not a thing on your calendar to do. If it genuinely has to move, move it. Don't delete it. Deleting it is the tell. Because here's the deal. You're going to run into situations where you do have to move it. We're not perfect. Things do come up. And so that's not the bad thing. You send them the new time, same day if you can, and the person with less power shouldn't have to chase the person with more. This is still the most important 30 minutes on my calendar. You have to say it out loud. And then be honest, similar to the bag situation with Odysseus. Here's the deal. Sometimes you can't tell them the whole reason why, but one of my big things that I loved at Zillow was they had this saying is like, turn on the lights. And to be completely honest, turning on the lights is what you should be doing in this situation with a direct report. If you have to cancel it or move it, be honest. Yeah, okay, maybe you can't get in the details of it specifically, but what you can do is you can tell them some of the details. And so you can say something like, I can't give you the details yet, and I will the second I can. That beats the silence, because silence gets filled. They're going to assume what they want to assume, just like the crew of Odysseus started to build out their own story. That's the important thing, is like, you can't let them continue to fester with their own story of like, they don't care about me. Because you do. Your people are going to write a story in the space where you said nothing. You don't get to choose whether they write one. They're going to do it. You only get to choose whether yours got there first. And that's the important thing. Protect it like it's sacred. Please, please. I still remember too, a mentor of mine told me the same thing. It was with a higher up leader. He would always tell me like, hey, Stephen, this time's sacred. And so sometimes we would do a skip level, and whenever I put a skip level, he would actually ask me, hey, I want you to put it on my calendar, because he wanted to see the effort. And so the other thing is, if I didn't come prepared to the one-on-one, he would also, hey, what do you want to talk about? And so he would actually cancel it if I showed up without anything. So like, we'd jump on the meeting and cancel it. A couple of things I learned from that is he taught me preparation's key in a one-on-one as well. And so I would go with caution with that, but also realize the sacredness of it, sacredness of time as well. For us to be sitting down on a one-on-one, it is sacred time. It is a table where you're sitting either across the camera or not. And so hold it that sacred, and teach your direct reports to come prepared. That's the whole point of why I created an app around this. But here's the thing. So going back, 12 ships left Troy under Odysseus' command. He came home alone. Nobody makes a movie out of the crew's names, which is fascinating when you think about it. You can be brilliant and beloved and still get home alone. Don't move the meeting. And if you move it, tell them what's in the bag. I will say time and time again, don't cancel it. I've had too many great one-on-ones and great relationships built over those that it makes the biggest difference on whether your direct reports trust you or not. Because here's the deal, and here's the honest truth. When you're leading a team, you can lose trust with them very quickly. Yes, you hope that they trust you, but the important thing is you're doing things to build trust. Just like I think of my kids. Yes, my kids are born naturally with a trust of their parents, but as you get older, you can quickly, as a parent, lose that trust. So I think of my oldest daughter right now. I explained this the last time, going into high school. But if I'm not showing up for her, she won't trust me. I think about that time and time again. She actually came home yesterday crying, and my wife, my loving wife that she is, pulled me aside, and I didn't know this. I dropped everything. I got off work. I pushed it to the side and said, my daughter's more important because I want to build that trust that she comes to me. And I went into her room and I hugged her. And I just said, I love you. And immediately she started opening up of what happened. And in retrospect, to her, it was a big thing. To me or to anyone else, it might have seemed more like a little thing. But I even pushed that aside and I said, you know what? If it's a big thing for her, it's a big thing for me. And I just hugged her. I didn't solve the problem. I just let her spill her heart. And honestly, it was one of those experiences where I didn't need to say anything. She just wanted someone to be there. One-on-ones are that way. If you're just there, that's the biggest thing. And you're listening intently and you show that you care. That's the big thing. You don't want to end alone. If you look back on your career, just like Odysseus showed up to his home alone, you don't want to show up at the end of your career and look back and think, I was alone. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that for you. I look back right now in my career and look at all the relationships I helped build, but also the relationships I still continue to have because of those relationships I built, of incredible people that even taught me amazing things. And that's the important thing. So in closing, remember, lead people, lead deeper, lead well. PATC. Thank you for watching and listening.